Good morning, afternoon, evening, midnight snacks for some of you. I don't know what you're doing. Anyway, welcome to Meet Your Makers, the show where we talk to the designers, writers, and artists who make all of the lovely tabletop role playing games we love so very, very much. And today, my very special guest is Mr. Geoffrey McVey. How you doing, Geoffrey?
I'm doing well. It's a warm day. My cat is appreciating that and has already started to melt in the windowsill.
I think that's actually one of the main themes that we try to focus on with the show. If there's a cat nearby, it needs to be vaguely liquid, windowsill or not. So that's good. That's a good sign for the for
Good,
the
good.
for the stream. To be honest, it means we're on the normal here. That's what's important because that's what we at Onyx Path are very well known for, being super normal. Just that's how it works for us.
Just a pair of regular guys.
I think so. Just couple of dudes being guys. Jeffrey, what might our audience know you from? What work would they be familiar with that you've been working on?
Well, nearly everything that I've done for Onyx Path has been for the Scion line. Worked on all the core books from Origin up to God, and then what else? For Saints and Monsters, I wrote most of the Sorcerers, if you like those. For Once and Future, I did the Plant Dawn, the Welsh pantheon there. Um, and bits and pieces of other things. If you find some really niche and obscure mythological reference, it's probably one of mine, because I love taking these tiny details and going, oh, I can make a story out of that.
Oh yeah, especially when it's niche, because then you can convince lots of readers out there that maybe you came up with it yourself. I'm
Or they'll have
literally
a
one.
pleasant surprise down the line when they read something and go, wait a minute.
Yeah, wait a damn minute. I love it. Um, so let's start from the beginning. What got you started in tabletop role playing games, just in general, as a hobbyist, if you will?
Oh, let's see. It's been a while. I started in the late 70s. Um, a friend of mine, or a friend of mine's brother, actually, had got into D&D, but at a very rudimentary level, which is to say they may have had, I don't know, maybe the Three Little Brown books and some collections of monsters from our primary school library. And they would just kind of work something out from there. But I mean, it was a primary school library. Everyone had read the same books, so it's like,
Right.
you walk into a room and there's a kappa. We bow to him. The water spills out from his head. You win. Okay, next room.
It's as simple as that when you've all gone through the same library three times over, right?
Exactly. But I went from there, um, sort of straight and heavily into D&D for a while. My that I was lucky enough that when I was growing up, there was the owner of a local game store who ran sort of weekend lessons in a local library on how to play D&D. So I started, learned from that, then moved on to playing games down at his store. This was in Toronto, the Battered Dwarf, for any of the extremely old people around here. Um, from there, spent my high school years, in the summertime at least, working at a summer D&D camp, the nerdiest camp of all. The
That's
camp where the campers never saw the sun. They just,
that's a beautiful thing. I'm
oh,
oh
yeah, if you're the sort of gamer-obsessed teen like I was, then it's just, wait a minute. So I'm going to be playing D&D for 6 hours a day, and I'm getting paid for it.
pure nightmare.
Okay, sure. Let's do that. No, it was loads of fun, and then from there, uh, high school years, we branched out a little bit, um, experimented with what we called at the time, and this would have been very early '90s, um, what we called Zen role playing,
Okay.
because all of us in our group were people who had sat around with rule books a lot and were the sort of min-maxer, optimizer people that are a DM's nightmare.
Right.
So we decided to do something different. Said, all right, we're going to start a new game. It's going to be a modern urban fantasy thing. And I've got a copy of the rules that we're using. You as players don't need to see them. We'll just tell you, like, yeah, your character can do this, and you can try this, and I'll take care of all the die rolls on that.
Mm-hmm.
Which launched us into some very intense, in the way that only late teens, early 20s role playing can be intense.
Oh, yes.
Gameplay.
So was this just straight freeform then at that point, or
it was pretty freeform. I mean, there were rules.
mm-hmm.
I think I tended to lean on Marvel superheroes for most of it because
Right.
it's a nice system. But the players we found really focused on their characters and their relationships and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So among my friend group, we did several variations of that. I mean, mine was mostly sort of modern fairy and Arthurian themed. A friend of mine did this beautiful angelic themed one, generally with the idea of these powers coming down and needing to pick mortals and give them some supernatural ability so that they could actually interfere in the world on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful stuff. Lasted for years. Time went on. University, grad school, cat.
Yeah. Ripley.
And
She has to the moment the show starts, she has to be involved.
when I dropped away from things for a while until just when D&D 3rd edition came out.
Mm-hmm.
At which point I thought, it's a new edition. And that means that there's not a whole lot that I have to read in order to be able to try to write something, say, for Dragon Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So I threw in, this is one of my minor points of pride, threw in an article. Just after the Player's Handbook had come out, and it was on trying to expand sorcerers a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because it had said, well, they generally assume that they're descendants of dragons, but, there may be other possibilities. So I wrote this thing, Magic in the Blood, that just outlined, oh, here are all the different kinds of sorcerers you could be. Fey-blooded, or alchemical experimentation, or this and that. Little did I realize that people would pick that up and kind of run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what sorcerers are now. Though they went far further than I did, which is good. I was being very cautious earlier. Yeah. After that,
was that
then
your was that something? Was that like kind of your first foray into attempting to get your work picked up by the powers that be?
Yes. Yeah. And I continued on. I wrote a few things for Dragon, not too many. I don't remember how many now, 3 or 4 tops. But yeah, and a few years after that, this is, the more that I think back about this, the more it's all just complete luck.
Well, that's a big part of it, isn't it? You have to be prepared. You have to have the skill, but when it comes down to it, you're prepping for an opening, and that's just pure luck.
Yeah. In this case, prepared for a little bit of a stretch because I was playing City of Heroes
Mm.
with, with a nice group of people eventually. And one of them, I mentioned that, I was a gamer, and she said, oh, my fiance does that, or he does some writing for that. Like, oh, it's like, yeah, no, he works for Paizo and Wizards of the Coast. And I said, oh, well, I'd written this sort of stuff for Dragon. She came back a moment later and said, yeah, he's heard of them and he really likes them, so you should chat.
Well, Jesus.
And that got me into the next stretch. Then from there, it was on to the wondrous few years of gaming networking that was Google Plus, that introduced me to a bunch of other people, and that eventually got me my first bit of writing for Onyx Path. So,
And what was your first project with Onyx Path?
first one was for the book Darkening Sky, which was it was a World of Darkness thing, Dark Ages, and it was a set of several different scenarios for each of the main types of things. I was working on the Inquisitor chapter. I was did half the chapter. The concept behind it was something called the Phantasmagoria occurred that revealed all supernatural creatures for what they are. And the players are playing Inquisitors who are just running around trying to put out fires.
Yeah.
It was fun and a good lesson in sort of what's expected, how to turn in drafts, how to do things, and just the more solid technical side of it.
Well, can you think of some of the earliest lessons you learned when you were because I feel like when you're freelancing like that in a big way, you're just kind of thrown into the fire basically at that point. Were there any important lessons that you picked up that are still valid to what you do today?
Well, read the outline, always important.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that sort of gamer, slightly obsessive brain that tends to fixate on a lot of small details, that it sometimes takes an editor to kind of shake me and go, these parts don't matter, right? Players are not going to notice. So that I brought along with that, one of the lessons that I picked up in the years that I was teaching, which was a colleague reminding another friend of ours, do less. You don't need to be ultra prepared for every possibility.
Yeah.
Which is important especially when doing scenarios for games, always. It's become more important working on Scion because you absolutely cannot predict what players are going to do. In older role-playing games, you could at least say, okay, I know that they're going to do one of these three things if put in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Or option 4, where they just leave entirely, but we'll pretend that one doesn't exist.
Right.
But yeah, you get to Scion, it's like, you have a massive fortress ahead of you. It's like, I'm going to try to punch the concept of fortresses out of existence. It's like,
right.
Right, you can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
roll for it.
Yeah.
So you just have to shrink things down and really just focus on what the story guide characters are doing and what happens if they succeed. But other than that, don't try to plan too much or explain too much to the people reading what you're doing.
Now that's interesting because with Scion specifically, so much of it is based on actual mythology, actual religion, theology, that sort of thing. Um, how do you find that balance there in terms of basing a world or a game in an area that has all of this mythology that is true and real and part of its meta, basically part of its background, its lore, and also playing it a little loose for some of your gamers, that sort of thing.
It's, I admit, at the beginning, it was a little bit of a challenge for me because my background, I've got a PhD in religious studies. I used to teach religion and mythology, and so came into it. I mean, as part of the reason I was brought into it was because I had that background, but came into the writing going, okay, this is generally how things look, and when something veered off from that, um, where I don't know, there was a write up of some figure from a pantheon, and look and go, that's not accurate. I've got sources that can tell you what the actual version is. I can give them to you, but eventually just had to take a breath because as soon as things hit the players, it's out of your hands anyways.
Yeah.
You can try to set up a situation, but they're going to do their thing. It's no different from any other game in that way. Um, but I try, at least with the material that I put into the game, to make sure that things I add generally have, I'll say, precedent somewhere. There is going to be a source, even if it isn't an obvious one, and even if there's no straight line from the original source to how a modern incarnation of that source is behaving. Um, but there's at least a general link that keeps it familiar but mythic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess that's the fun with something like Scion, isn't it? Where you're taking these, in many cases, truly ancient stories and allegories and myths and giving them some sort of modern context. So I guess there is room to play there in a big way.
Oh yes, yeah, and I follow on both the Onyx Path Discord and the fan Discord uh, people's descriptions of their games, and every once in a while I raise an eyebrow, but they're doing a lot with it, and they're doing a lot of seem like very fun things with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I count that as a win for the game in general. Um, and I know it can be a little intimidating for players, especially very new players, who think, "Oh God, I have to learn all of world mythology and religion, and if I do it wrong, I'm going to offend a huge number of people."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, just do your best, you know. Just be respectful about things as best you can. Find out the information. Be curious about the material you're working with, and everything will turn out fine.
Do you find that there is, when you begin a new project within Scion, that there's a certain method you use for research, or are you just drawing from previous stuff that you got a PhD in it? Like, do you find you're all, what's I guess what I'm saying is what's the ratio of like new research you're doing versus drawing from the wealth of knowledge you already have?
There's a lot of new research because I'm sort of information magpie. I mean, I find small, shiny, cool things, and they go, "Oh, I wonder what that could connect to." And
Mm-hmm.
this reminds me of this other thing, and then I'll sort of bounce around from place to place. And thank God I've got access to some uh, journal articles online and a lot of books. Uh, so I can start to make these I'll say thematic, poetic connections between things. Occasionally, it gets a little bit out of control, and there's just a mood that starts something.
Are there any examples of something like that you can offer up? Because that sounds like where a lot of the fun stuff comes from, if you ask me.
For certain definitions of fun.
yeah, 100%.
So the Book of Demigod Scenarios that just came out, Path to Apotheosis, split into 3 parts, covering, the early, mid, and later part of your demigod progression towards godhood. I did the middle one. All 3 are excellent, by the way. Well, at least the first and third are, but I have opinions on my own. And the middle part of the apotheosis journey for Scions involves generally loss and a descent into the underworld. So I looked at that and said, well, okay, this is going to be a depressing one. And just decided to focus on themes of loss and grief and guilt to some extent. I can't say how well I got my point across, but I will say I was one of the authors who, after our developer looked at the manuscript when it was all turned to us and said, "Are you guys okay?"
I think that's a sign of a good manuscript, if you ask me. If you're able to drag out, like, something's going on with these people.
Something. Do we need an intervention here?
Right.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
In the form of money, please.
Yes. There's, I think it's. I've never been in a point in my life where a cool $1 million wouldn't fix what ailed me. Just that's all.
Yeah.
I'm a simple man, simple tastes.
Same. I'd settle for half that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't
want to be greedy.
No. Humble. Humility is the name of the game here. That's why the show's called Meet Your Makers. Yeah, go on.
No, please.
Well, I mean, we were talking about Apotheosis, Path to Apotheosis. So, what else have you been working on lately?
Let's see. So Mythic Shards was the most recent one to get funded and done. I worked on Farewell to Heroes, basically the noir section of it, made mostly for Origin and low hero tier. And I love doing that because I'm a huge noir fan. But I admit I did feel a bit jealous as I was looking at everyone else's sections. It's like post-apocalyptic, superheroes, giant mecha, we're in space. And I'm like, mine's just kind of a mood. It's just,
it's really it, yeah.
It's just wow. It's
cigarette smoke and dames.
Smoke, yeah. It's just lots of rain and the colors all seem washed out. I'm not sure how to convey that through game mechanics.
Well, how do you do that? How does that fit in with an Origins game, for example?
In the case of Farewell to Heroes, particularly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
In that one, well, at the hero level, I added 2 new fate bindings. The Innocent, who is an updated replacement for the Damsel in Distress, basically. It's someone who, through their innocence, can drive you to be a better person. And your relationship with them might end with them sacrificing themselves, or them becoming more jaded, or them managing to escape intact, so to speak. And then the other one was The Lure, which is the femme fatale replacement, who will also help you half the time while subtly screwing up your plans along the way. But again, has that possibility for redemption right at the end, or taking a lot of trouble that would otherwise be coming your way, in the way that the femme fatale tends to be turned in at the end of film noir detective films. It's like,
Right.
oh, sorry, I love you, but there you go. We need to serve someone up here. So that, I mean, but that's on a hero level. On the origin level, it's mostly in the sort of background of it. I mean, the general concept is that at some point in the fairly recent past, something happened globally called the Heracles incident. Other worlds and supernatural things were unleashed globally for about 3 days. And then they disappeared again. Nobody is exactly sure what the cause was. Well, very few people are. But nations around the world decided, we don't want that ever to happen again. So we're clamping down on active Scions. In some cases, hunting them, in some cases, trying to recruit them to work for governments rather than being wandering independent heroes. Because my notion is that in a world like Scion's, everybody has probably opened up a newspaper and read something about tremendous collateral damage happening someplace or a monster destroying someplace, but it's always happened somewhere else. And it's happened to someone else in the same way that we can read about natural disasters claiming thousands of lives and go, oh, that's terrible, but then go on with our days.
Right.
This is something that happened to everybody. Like, nobody could ignore it. And so the mortals of the world just lash out and say, yeah, we're not dealing with this.
Right.
This is too risky now. Which means that Scions in the game have to be very subtle about how they use their abilities now. There are agencies watching people. Ordinary folk are going to inform on them if they get the chance, and if they think they can profit from it. So it means trying to do things a lot more low-key than you would in a regular Scion game.
It puts more secrecy and kind of subterfuge in it. Little
Right.
cloak and dagger kind of thing.
Exactly. So there's, one of the new systems it does introduce is a system for doing schemes and heists that are just very complex things with a certain countdown clock before somebody notices what you're doing and you have to get out of town.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's super fun.
So aside from the standard sort of mystery noir influences, it's also connected to, don't let anyone know this, TV shows like The Incredible Hulk, where it's a standard situation, you know. Dr. Banner comes into town, there's a problem. He faces it, he turns into the Hulk, he has to leave again.
Right.
And he just moves on from town to town that way. Or if you're Canadian, The Littlest Hobo, which is roughly the same except with a German Shepherd.
He turns into a German Shepherd?
No, it's just a German Shepherd wandering from town to town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be part of a government experiment. It was never made very clear.
Oh, I am not familiar with that one. That one sounds
Nobody is. But yeah, those sorts of things like the A-Team. I think the absolute best Scion inspiration for modern TV would be the show Poker Face.
Okay.
With
what's her name? Is it
Natasha
Natasha?
Leon.
Yeah.
Yes. Where the main character has one ability. She can tell if someone is lying to her.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know what the truth is. She doesn't know why they're lying. She just knows that they're lying. And she's also on the run from a mob boss for various reasons. So she's bouncing from town to town, and she gets wrapped up in trouble and uses that one, like, perfect heroic knack level ability to solve the crime and figure out what's going on. And then she skips town again. So, yeah, so that was a
With
major influence there.
with a game like this, do you think it's better suited then for kind of short term games, or I mean, I guess it would work in sense of longer campaigns as well.
Well, in my copious spare time, I'm trying to work on ways to let origin tier games last longer
Mm.
and be satisfying, like get a sense of progress and development, um, without it just being, well, we've been playing a few months and all of our stats are at 5 now. I'm not sure where we go from here.
Right.
Um, so, and that's because I mean, Origin in the very beginning of Hero, I think, despite the amount of stuff that I wrote for Demigod and God, they are the levels of the game that I enjoy the most.
Why do you think that is?
Um, it's because I like people. I like stories about ordinary people caught up in strange, messed up situations. I mean, an Origin level Scion game can be like, mm, say, like Fargo, but with the supernatural involved.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you see a bunch of normal people, um, and someone just makes a mistake. And then it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs until everything is completely chaotic and out of control, and there are bodies everywhere. Um, and and I like games like that. I like games where when you finally track down, the root cause of, the vast curse that's come across the town, you realize it was something really stupid and trivial, and the person who did it isn't an evil villain. Things just got out of control.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So if I have any recurring themes, that people might spot in things that I write, that's definitely one of them.
Okay. So what sort of influences do you have when it comes to your writing based on that? You've mentioned Fargo, Incredible Hulk, stuff like that. Are there any authors or films or TV shows or something like that that really influence your style when it comes to writing adventures and supplements like this?
Uh, Unfortunately, my style has been mostly influenced by my academic side.
Okay. Okay.
So, and a lot of the influences too. It's if if someone did a reasonably careful reading of the story guide section of Origin and Hero, um, they could pick out what academics I was relying on for my things.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
and there was one other tasty bit that came out that I wrote that addresses this a lot more directly. It's called "Making Myths Modern." No, "Making History Modern." Anyhow, it has "making" in it and my name on it, so that should narrow it down.
We could pick it out of
Yeah,
the lineup.
um, and that one I do actually go straight ahead and say, all right, here are academics who study myth and folklore. Here are their approaches, and here's how you might be able to use them in a game.
Hmm.
Because what else am I going to do with my degree? I spend a long time saying, oh, this is a really cool theory or approach. How can I put that into a book somewhere?
Right. um, so we know you've done some work for D&D, a lot of work for Scion. Are there any franchises or games out there that you just dying to work on that you'd love to be involved in somehow?
Mm, let's see. I can't say uh, franchises, properties. I mean, I'm curious right now about Curseborn.
Yeah.
Just from what I've seen, it's stuff that I'm interested in, and it doesn't have the huge weight of lore that so many other games do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Exalted I find interesting, but I'm never going near that game.
That's a very special group over there, and I adore them for their passion. Between you and me, Exalted players scare me.
Yeah,
They're terrifying.
yeah, and
Peace, not love.
I am getting old. I figure if I can't lift all of the books, I'm just not going to do it.
It's a lot, isn't it? I had this thing going for a while where I decided I was going to take freelancing and writing about and writing for gaming seriously, and one of my instincts for that, because I come from a somewhat academic background, was okay, time to crack open some books and start reading and really get the background and everything like that, and bought up a bunch of core books and bought one of the older editions of the core Exalted book, and then looked at everything else it had, and I was like, I think this one we skip. I think we skip. I think this one. That's a lot. That's a lot. And the people who love it, they devour it.
Oh yeah,
It's fascinating stuff. But yeah,
no,
for
no.
me,
The people who set up that way of doing books, they just wrote job protection into the entire thing.
it's true. It's true because those fans will buy the books,
Mhm.
and they'll buy whatever you send them. They're always looking for more, which is great. That's what you want in a fan base. That's really cool. But it's a lot. It is a lot.
But no, I think if there's any sort of, not even a franchise, just a style of work that I
Mm-hmm.
still want to do at some point. Um, I still want to write a mythic romance book for Scion,
Oh yeah.
because I mean, firstly, it would have to be done very carefully,
Sure.
but it's so tightly bound up with all of these stories in different ways from cultures around the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I would love to have the chance to explore that, and you know, just have slightly more kind of. I just want cozy heroic adventures. Damn it! I just
Yeah. Yeah.
want, you know, I just want Heracles and Karna to open up a bed and breakfast together somewhere in New England.
There's so much room for that. Like that's a great idea. But that cozy genre stuff, cozy fantasy, cozy horror. That's the name of the game. This might be your moment. This might be the time to do that. That's what people are really into right now.
Cozy urban fantasy. That'd be all
Oh
set.
yeah. Oh yeah. People are loving that stuff right now. This is when we need it.
I'll have to buy a cardigan before I can really get into the right mindset.
I'll let you borrow one of mine. I got several.
Oh, thank
So
you.
yeah, there is nothing better than a cardigan. I stand by this. Uh, let me see. Is there a game out there that you think is kind of an unsung hero? A game that you don't understand why more people don't play it, more people don't know about it or talk about it?
Hmm. Good question. Um, there are games that I was interested in years back when they were very hot for a little while.
Hmm.
Um, I'm thinking specifically of Burning Wheel,
Okay.
Luke Crane's. game, which has a really good system to it. It can be extremely crunchy if you want it to be. It can be looser if you don't. I mean, I ran a game there for my wife at the time where she was playing a temple sculptor, and getting involved in local politics and all of this. And the game had rules to let me deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
It had, you know, um, it has a social combat system that is as detailed as any formal dueling system that you'll see for anything else. And yeah, it's a very nice system, but it does what it does, in a narrow way. I mean, the question behind the game is, how far are you willing to go to get what you want?
Right.
And that comes through every time you draw a sword, because combat is risky.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you cast a spell, it has one of those, everybody has a tiny bit of wild magic in them, setups where it's not likely, but there is a tiny, tiny chance that when you decide to cast Detect Magic, you will accidentally level a city.
Wow.
Can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that you have to think about. It's like, wait, do I actually need to use magic right now? Or,
Right.
yeah.
It adds a weight to everything, basically. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, that way of approaching games where they're set up to help you answer a question as a player or as storyteller, those are ones that I appreciate. And that's also, again, something that I tried to put in. I think it hit especially hard in Demigod with the Apotheosis system, that it's like, it doesn't announce it, but this is actually all about growing up and becoming an adult.
right.
It's a full rite of passage into adulthood, which means some parts of it are going to suck.
Right. Right.
But then you get there, and you kill the father, and oh God, Freud. No, we take that part out.
Do you have any other projects that are coming out soon? Any upcoming products?
Let's see. Mythic Shards, War Games,
War games.
which is, I think that one is attached to Titans Rising.
Mm-hmm.
So if you back Titans Rising, I think you get War Games.
Okay.
Or pretty sure. I don't know. I just do the writing. They do all that other stuff.
They handle all that.
But the concept there, and it can run from origin all the way to God, with a focus on hero and demigod. The idea is that pantheons around the world have decided that they're going to gather their champions for a competition to see which pantheon gets to shape what war is going to look like for the next century.
Oh, wow.
And Titans and their Scions are not invited to this. So at the low end of it, it's Titanic Scions trying to sneak into the games, either to take part or disrupt them. And then at Demigod, it assumes that your Titans did something right the first time around, and they've been invited back for something closer to the finals. And they get another run against a hilariously violent group of heroic Scions. Following Mars, Ares, and Bellona. So three war deities. Mm-hmm. They are set to go. But yeah, so that's coming out. yeah, I mean, God isn't out yet, but I think I did a bit on the Demigod Companion. Some Scion players will be happy that I did a bit of rewriting for the Creature's Birthright. So that ought to be a little tidier now. And added my favorite follower character in there officially.
Do tell.
His name is Kevin. And his heroic titles being Giant Slayer and Employee of the Month. Kevin is an office temp worker who happened to cross paths with a Scion who either passed on or unleashed some extraordinary fighting abilities on him. Kevin still just wants to be Employee of the Month. He's happy to work in the office, but now he gets caught up in people's orbits and, gets hired off to work for some hero somewhere, and he's just absolutely deadly backup. If you're not a fighting Scion and you want someone, that's the guy to go for.
That's the guy.
That's the guy. Otherwise, soft-spoken, nice guy.
Employee of the month.
Protector, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to meet Kevin. That sounds outstanding.
Good.
Is there anything else? Anything else you want to bring up before we wrap this puppy up?
Well, not so much. I think the on levels of excitement that I'm parallel to, I'll say the StoryPath Ultra crowdfunding right now is looking very good, and I've looked through what's been released of the manuscript, and I like it a lot. It's exactly what a nice rules-focused core book should be.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, everything
I think
laid out clearly.
I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that. That sounds like it just yeah, like you said, it's just a good solid core rule book. It's going to be responsible for a lot of good games. I got a good feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people playing other StoryPath games are going to be, doing their own homebrew rewriting of things.
Absolutely.
As they should.
As they should. Have fun with it.
No, well, otherwise, that is me. Oh, actually, no, one last thing. And I'm only saying this because I can see the background that you've got. I had no idea Cthulhu was so jacked.
Just absolutely chiseled, isn't he?
It's distracting.
Yeah. That's what he's there for. Yeah, I never thought of him as like a 8-pack kind of guy, but there it is.
There he is.
There's nothing to be done. He's right there. It's good.
Everyone else is pretty much fine. Yeah.
Everyone else is represented pretty well. But Cthulhu, jeez, he's just getting. I don't know. I feel like this is like post-divorce Cthulhu. Like he starts to he starts to work out, get that revenge weight in, and he's got something to prove.
Man, he's gonna like get a bunch of yoga instructor cultists and a sports car.
Yeah.
You don't want to see that.
It's a mess. It's not the best era Cthulhu, but definitely one of the more entertaining ones, I will say.
Yes, yeah. That's all right.
Elon Musk Cthulhu.
At the end, he'll relax a bit. He'll talk to his children again. Everything.
Yeah. He'll get in touch with his inner elder god and feel better about himself. I hope that's what. It
was also terrifying.
It was just absolutely and that's the thing. At this point, he's gotten away from what made Cthulhu great. He's got to get back to the old ways, the old destruction of naval vessels and madness and stuff like that. The fun stuff. The fun stuff. He's got to get. You know what? I think though he's got to get off Twitter. That's his main thing. If we can get Cthulhu off Twitter, I think a lot will be accomplish there.
I mean, I haven't wanted to tell him he's wasting $8 a month, but
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, just not worth it. Not doing anyone any good. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Is there any place in particular that you want people to find you on social media, websites, anything along those lines?
Oh, if anyone actually wants to find me, the easiest way to do it is on the Onyx Path Discord, where I am cleverly hidden behind the name Geoffrey.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm always there and happy to chat about interesting things.
I love it. Thank you once again, Jeffrey. This has been a great show.
Thank you. This has been lovely.
And thank everybody for coming out and seeing us. As always, you can find me on Pixel Lit Podcast, the only podcast about video game novelizations, which makes us the best podcast about video game novelizations. We've got it covered. We've got it cornered. Life is good. But in the meantime, in between time, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. And hope everyone has a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.